My son signed the papers while I was still hooked to the IV. Smiled like it was mercy. But I wasn't confused. I wasn't grateful. I was watching. They whispered to the doctor while I stared at the ceiling, pretending the medication dulled my mind. "It's best for everyone," my daughter said softly, glancing at me like I was already gone. "She's declining fast. She won't even notice." But I noticed. I heard every word through the steady beep of machines. They spoke about me like I was furniture, like I was a puzzle they had solved. My house emptied, my accounts drained, my decisions signed away while my hands were still too weak to push them back. They nodded at each other, proud of how easily they'd done it. I didn't fight. Not then. My face stayed soft. My eyes stayed distant. But inside, something sharpened. They thought the nursing home was the end of my story. A soft place to tuck me away. A place to forget me while they enjoyed what they'd taken. But they forgot who raised them, who sacrificed for them, who learned how to survive long before they ever learned how to take. I let them wheel me into that beige room with its plastic flowers and its locked doors. I let the nurse pat my hand and call me sweetheart. I let my children leave, whispering false promises of visits that wouldn't come. And while they believed I was slipping, I was memorizing every detail, every account number, every forged document, every signature I never gave. They thought this was goodbye, but I wasn't drifting away. I was waiting for the moment to remind them, you don't bury someone who's still breathing. You don't steal from a woman who taught you how to fight. And you never ever lock away someone who knows where every door leads. I worked, I cleaned, I fed them, before I fed myself. In the beginning, it was just us. My husband gone too soon. The house quiet except for their tiny voices, their feet running across floors that creaked under the weight of new beginnings. I didn't have much, but I had them, and that was enough to keep me moving. The morning started before sunrise. Oatmeal simmering on the stove while I packed school lunches. Crusts cut off, little notes tucked inside, reminding them they were loved. They never knew how thin the groceries stretched, how carefully I counted every dollar. They never felt the weight of the electricity bill sitting on the kitchen counter like a quiet threat. I skipped my own doctor visits so I could pay for their braces. I watched my ankles swell while standing behind a cash register for hours, but I smiled when they showed me their perfect new teeth, wide and proud. They called me Supermom, and for them, I was. When college came, I sold my wedding ring, the one my husband slipped onto my hand with trembling fingers, long ago, the last piece of him I carried. I stared at it a long time before handing it over at the pawn shop. But tuition needed paying. Books needed buying. Dreams needed feeding. I worked. I cleaned. I fed them before I fed myself. Birthdays were never grand, but they were full. Homemade cakes with lopsided frosting. Streamers from the dollar store. They laughed. They sang. They blew out candles while I stood behind them, quietly praying their wishes would come true. Graduations followed. Caps tossed into the sky. College diplomas framed and hung on walls. They stood tall, young adults, with futures I had built one sacrifice at a time. My chest swelled with pride watching them step into lives I never allowed myself to imagine for my own. Then came weddings. I sat in the front row, hands folded, heart full, watching them find partners, build homes. I crocheted baby blankets for their children, babysat so they could take vacations I never dreamed of. Baked pies for holidays they sometimes arrived late to. I smiled and told myself this was enough. This was love returned. I worked, I cleaned, I fed them before I fed myself. And yet, as the years wore on, the calls came less often. The visits grew shorter. They used to sit for hours at my kitchen table, their voices filling the room. Now, they glanced at their phones, at their watches. "We're so busy, Mom. You know how life gets." The hugs felt thinner. Their eyes darted elsewhere when we spoke, like they were already thinking about what came next. I told myself it was just life. They had families of their own now, responsibilities. I couldn't expect everything to stay the same, but still something shifted. A coolness crept in that I pretended not to feel. I clung to the memories of their small hands holding mine, of their heads resting on my shoulder, of their little voices calling out for me in the dark. I worked. I cleaned. I fed them before I fed myself. And now? They barely look at me. The signs came softly at first, like distant rain, easy to ignore if you tell yourself it's just wind. The phone stopped ringing as often. Days would pass. Then weeks. "We've just been so busy, Mom," they'd say when they finally called. "The kids have so much going on, you know how it is." And I nodded. Of course, I always nodded. That's what mothers do. We make excuses for them before they even open their mouths. When they visited, they sat differently, not relaxed like before, perched on the edge of their seats, glancing at each other when they thought I wouldn't notice, watching me, studying me. One afternoon, my daughter gently took my hand across the table. "Wouldn't you feel safer in a place where someone could always check on you, Mom?" "Just in case." I laughed it off. "I'm not an invalid," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "I still cook my own meals. I garden. I walk to the market." She smiled, but it wasn't the kind of smile that reaches the eyes. "Of course, Mom, you're doing great. For your age. For your age." That little phrase landed like a stone in my stomach. Then came the questions. Light at first, but they grew heavier with each visit. "Do you remember where the will is, Mom? You know, just so we're prepared if anything happens. Have you written down your banking information? It might help us help you if things get complicated. Do you have a list of your medications? We wouldn't want you to get confused." Confused. That word slipped from their mouths more often now, always followed by that same patient smile, like I was a child pretending to be grown. I told myself they were concerned, that this was love, that they only wanted to protect me, but the questions never stopped. They circled me like slow-moving clouds. At night, I'd stand in front of the mirror, studying my own reflection. My hands were steady, my mind sharp, my memory clear. But still, their voices echoed in my ears. "For your age. Just in case. We're worried." I tried to believe them. I tried to hold on to the image of my babies, the ones I raised with sleepless nights and empty pockets, the ones I sacrificed everything for. But something inside me shifted, a quiet voice whispering underneath all my excuses. Something's not right. I looked at the empty chairs around my table, the cold plates waiting for visits that never came. My gut twisted with the weight of it. But my heart, my foolish, hopeful heart, refused to believe it. I didn't want to believe it. It was supposed to be a family lunch. My son called that morning, cheerful. "We thought it would be nice to spend some time together, Mom. We'll pick you up around noon." I dressed carefully. My best blouse. Soft lavender. I even baked a pie to bring. Foolish, maybe. But I wanted to believe. I wanted to believe they still saw me as their mother. They arrived on time, smiling too brightly. My daughter slipped her arm through mine as we walked to the car. My son opened the door, held it for me like I was made of glass. The drive felt too long for a simple lunch. The road unfamiliar. My stomach tightened, but I stayed quiet. When we pulled into the circular driveway, the sign announced where I was. Willow Grove Assisted Living. My daughter's voice softened, like she was soothing a scared animal. "It's just a tour, Mom. Just to see what options are out there. Nothing's decided." But everything was already decided. I felt it. Inside, they led me through cheerful hallways, staff smiling like polished dolls. "You'll love it here, Mrs. Dawson. So much to do. And you won't have to worry about anything." I wanted to scream, but my throat closed tight. My son stood close behind me, gently steering me forward with the light pressure of his hand on my back. In the small room they'd prepared for me, I saw it. My things already there. Framed photos, my knitted blankets, even my favorite teacup placed like trophies on sterile shelves. My house had been emptied behind my back. When I asked for my phone, my daughter said softly, "Let's not worry about phones right now, Mom. You need rest." I asked for my keys. My son shook his head. "We'll take care of everything. No stress." My accounts were frozen. They called it protection. I called it theft. Nurses began talking to me like I was already gone. "Let's get you dressed, sweetheart. Don't you worry your little head. Your family's taking care of everything. Everything." I tried to ask more questions. The answers never came. My daughter would smile and change the subject. My son would gently pat my hand, whispering, "You're safe now." Safe. Like a locked drawer. No phone calls allowed. No visitors permitted without approval. My world shrank into 4 beige walls, plastic flowers on the nightstand, and the faint hum of the central air. At night, I sat by the window, staring at the drawn curtains. No view, no stars. Just my reflection staring back, small and contained. The curtains were drawn, the flowers were fake. My voice didn't matter anymore. I wasn't screaming. I was writing. Screaming would have been useless in here. The nurses would have smiled, nodded, and called it confusion. The director would have gently whispered to my children, "She's struggling." My voice would have only served their story. So I stayed quiet. But I was wide awake. They underestimated the woman who raised them. The first victory was Smala forgotten pen, left behind on my bedside table by a nurse too busy chatting about weekend plans to notice. It was nothing to her, but to me, it was everything. I slipped it beneath my blanket, tucking it under my pillow like a secret. My hands were steady, my heart even steadier. Paper came next. At first, I tore small corners from the meal calendars delivered every week. I wrote tiny, careful notes in the margins. Staff names, shifts, who said what, when. Then I discovered the back of medication schedules were often blank. Those became my ledgers, my silent witnesses. Every evening, once the rounds were done, and the halls settled into the low mechanical hum of nighttime care, I sat under the dim light and documented everything. I wrote the date they froze my accounts, the day they took my house key, the names of every staff member who spoke of my decline, the words my daughter whispered to the director when she thought I was asleep in my chair. "She won't last long. We need to secure things now, before it gets worse." Every word was a nail in their own coffin, and I recorded it all. They thought I was fading. I was filing. I remembered something else, too, something they had no idea I still carried in my head. Evelyn, my oldest friend. We met at church when we were young mothers. She went on to become a lawyer. Quiet, brilliant, ruthless when needed. Years had passed, but I remembered her phone number like it was stitched into my skin. Back when my husband died, Evelyn helped me draw up documents. Real documents. Quiet protections tucked away that even my children never knew existed. Accounts set aside in my name only. Backups I never thought I'd need, but I needed them now. They thought they controlled everything. They didn't know I still held pieces they couldn't see. Every morning, the staff rolled me to the community room with soft voices, calling me sweetheart. They offered me puzzle books and coloring pages like I was 5 years old. I smiled, nodded, and accepted them. All the while, I kept my growing collection of notes hidden safely beneath my pillow. The nurses whispered about me in the hallway. "She's declining quickly. Her family's already handling everything. It's sad, but at least she's being looked after." I heard every word, logged every shift change, wrote down every name. Days turned into weeks, but I was patient. Patience is a skill you master when you've spent your life sacrificing for others. I raised them with patience. Now, I was using that same patience to undo them. One morning, while being wheeled to my weekly fresh air break, I asked casually if I could send a letter. "It's my granddaughter's birthday." I smiled sweetly. "I just want to mail her a card." The receptionist smiled back, completely unaware of what she handed me. One envelope, one stamp. Enough. That night, under the blanket, I carefully folded my letter to Evelyn. 6 pages, front and back. Every detail they thought I couldn't remember. Every lie, every transaction, every signature I never gave. My handwriting steady, my mind sharp, my will unbreakable. In the morning, I handed the sealed envelope to the postman myself. "Just a birthday card," I said. He smiled and slipped it into his bag without a second thought. I watched him walk away, my heart calm. This was no longer survival. This was strategy. They thought locking me in this place was the end, but it was only the beginning. They underestimated the woman who raised them, and now I had set the first domino in motion. I took it all back. quietly. The letter reached Evelyn. She read every word, every note, every date scribbled in tight handwriting. She didn't hesitate, not once. Evelyn moved like a woman who had waited for this kind of fight. It started with a quiet visit. She arrived at Willow Grove wearing calm professionalism like armor. She didn't ask for permission to see me. She demanded it. The staff fumbled. The director whispered nervously into the phone. But eventually they brought me into the small visitor's room. She smiled when she saw me. "You still have that same look in your eyes," she said. "They have no idea what's coming, do they?" "No," I whispered, my voice steady. "They don't." Within days, the emergency motion was filed. Fraud, elder abuse, illegal guardianship, financial exploitation. Evelyn didn't just file complaints, she swung a hammer. The court responded fast. My so-called guardianship was frozen. Every legal document my children had paraded in front of the facility was challenged. And then, the judge ordered what none of them expected: an independent psychological evaluation. Real doctors, not hand-picked family friends. Doctors who asked me real questions, not leading questions meant to confuse. I sat across from them, answering calmly, my hand steady, my memory sharp. What day is it? Who is the president? Count backward from 100 by sevens. Recite the months in reverse. I completed every task with ease. Their pens scratched quietly across their clipboards. They exchanged glances impressed, but careful. "She is fully competent," they wrote. "Clear memory, sound judgment, no evidence of mental decline." Their report was filed with the court. My children's entire house of cards wobbled. The financial audits followed. Evelyn subpoenaed bank records, house sale documents, and power of attorney forms. The signatures they thought would never be questioned were analyzed under legal microscopes. The truth unraveled fast. Forged signatures, unauthorized withdrawals, quiet property sales rushed through while I lay in that hospital bed, too weak to speak but never too weak to remember. They didn't even deny it at first. They tried to explain. We thought it was best for her. We were protecting her assets. We didn't mean harm. But intent doesn't erase theft. The court date came sooner than they expected. My children sat across the courtroom, pale, avoiding my gaze. Their lawyer tried to soften their image. Family mistakes, misunderstandings. But Evelyn laid out every document with surgical precision. Every lie became undeniable. I spoke only once, my voice steady. They didn't protect me. They stole from me. And they did it while smiling. The judge's ruling was swift. Guardianship revoked. Full legal autonomy restored. Restitution ordered. Fraud investigation opened. My assets unfrozen. Accounts returned to my full control. The staff at Willow Grove avoided my eyes when I returned to my room that evening. They had played along while my children orchestrated the theft. Now, they didn't know what to say. I didn't need their words. Evelyn stood beside me at the facility's front door the next morning. The director handed me my discharge papers. Her smile tight, voice shaking. "We wish you the very best, Mrs. Dawson." I said nothing. They opened the doors that once felt like prison gates. I stepped into the sunlight. The breeze cool on my face. Suitcase rolling behind me. The sky stretched wide and free. The staff watched from inside, whispering behind glass walls as I walked toward Evelyn's car. Nurses who once spoke to me like I was fragile now saw me standing tall. I walked out with my dignity in one hand and their lies crumbling behind me. The world outside was mine again. I didn't yell. I sold it. The house they tried to seize, the one I built with scraped-together dollars and sleepless nights, never really belonged to them. It was mine. It had always been mine. And now, it was mine to release. Evelyn handled the sale swiftly, quietly. No calls to inform my children. No warnings. No family meetings filled with fake concern. The house listed quietly, sold quickly, and closed cleanly. The new owners never even knew the mess that preceded their purchase. To them, it was just another house with fresh paint and empty rooms. I watched the funds land into my private accounts. Accounts they never had access to. Protected. Untouchable. Every dollar they thought they'd pocketed was now secured in places they'd never find. Evelyn made sure of that. Next, we shut down the joint accounts, the ones they once called emergency safeguards. I had signed nothing willingly. Every fraudulent form they had filed was dismantled. The banks complied quickly once the court orders arrived. Their access was frozen, their authority revoked, their names erased from every financial document. They reached out then, as I knew they would. Emails, phone calls, messages piling up like dead leaves outside a locked door. Mom, please, we need to talk. You're making a mistake. You don't understand what's happening. This wasn't what we wanted. We still love you. The words shifted tone as the silence stretched. Guilt turned to accusation. Accusation turned to panic. This isn't you, Mom. You're being manipulated. You've turned cold. We were only trying to protect you. Protect me. Always that same high wrapped in soft words. I didn't respond. I let Evelyn handle the final filings. Restitution. Civil claims. Court-ordered repayments. Quiet consequences rolled forward like slow-moving thunder. And then, one morning, I wrote a simple note. My only reply. No anger. No explanation. Just truth. You moved me out. I moved on. Evelyn delivered it for me, slipping it into their mailbox without ceremony. They would read it and know there was nothing left to take. By the time the eviction notices arrived at their doors, I was already sitting on my new porch, sipping my tea, watching the late afternoon sun stretch long shadows across my garden. The lilies I planted swayed softly in the breeze. The wind carried no sounds of pleading voices, only peace. No more surprise visits. No more calls. No more forged papers. They once stood in my home, smiling while they dismantled my life piece by piece. Now they stood on porches that no longer belonged to them, clutching eviction papers while I poured myself another cup of tea. I didn't yell. I sold it, and I sat quietly as their world unraveled. They called. I didn't pick up. The voicemails stacked up one after another. Long pauses. Shaky voices. Carefully chosen words that tried to sound like regret but still dripped with excuses. Mom, please. We didn't mean for any of this to happen. We made mistakes. We got scared. We thought we were helping. We're still your children. They sent flowers. Bouquets delivered to a house they could no longer enter. Roses, lilies, cards, tucked inside with their looping handwriting. The words all carefully written. We love you. We're sorry. Let's fix this. But love doesn't erase what they did. Love doesn't dress up theft and call it care. Love doesn't knock you down and then ask for forgiveness only after the ground gives way. Family friends called too, voices cautious, like they were walking on eggshells. They're trying to reach you. They feel awful, you know. Maybe it's time to talk, at least. They're still your children. Yes, my children. The same children who stood over my hospital bed signing papers while I lay weak and silent. The ones who emptied my house while I was locked in that beige room. The ones who smiled while stealing. They're still your children. That phrase rang in my ears like a dull bell. But children grow up, and grown people make choices. They made me a problem. I became their consequence. This wasn't anger. This was clarity. This was what survival feels like when you've clawed your way out of something you should never have been forced into. I no longer waited for the doorbell, no longer checked the phone. The house was filled, only with what I chose to keep. The air smelled like the lavender I planted in my window boxes. The sun poured into every corner, soft and golden. No shadows, no dread, no waiting. I sat in my chair each evening, tea warm in my hands, watching the candles flicker softly as dusk settled outside my window. I read the books I never had time for before. I hummed old songs to myself as I cooked dinner just enough for one. I was not lonely. I was free. They knocked on doors that would never open again. They left gifts I would never touch. They spoke into phones I would never answer. They made me invisible when it suited them. Now I stayed invisible by choice. Peace isn't something you offer to people who watched you suffer while they profited. Peace is something you claim for yourself and protect with silence. They called. I didn't pick up, and my home remained still, warm, and mine. Maybe I wasn't the burden after all. For years, I had believed that my value came from how much I could carry. The meals cooked, the bills paid, the tears wiped, the sacrifices made in silence. I was always the one holding everything steady, while everyone else leaned on me. And I let them. I offered my back like solid ground. I thought that was my place. That when my strength finally faded, they would hold me like I once held them. That when my hands shook, they would steady me. But when that time came, they measured my worth by how easily I could be managed, moved, forgotten. Now I see it clearly. I was never the weight. I was the backbone. And they forgot. My home looks different now. Lighter, smaller, not crowded by old ghosts or false obligations. Every piece here was chosen by me. For me. I bought myself fresh flowers. Not the apology bouquets they once sent, but simple blooms I picked out on quiet afternoons. Yellow tulips, white daisies, bright against the soft morning light that spills through my windows. The kitchen smells of cinnamon and butter again. I bake what I want, when I want. I don't wait for holidays or guests who never come. I set one plate at my table and it is enough. My food, my recipes, my peace. The living room holds my favorite books now, stories I had tucked away for years, always telling myself I'd read them later when things were calmer. Later is here. The pages whisper softly as I turn them, as if they too are grateful for this stillness. I take my coffee outside most mornings, sitting barefoot on my small porch, the wood warm under my feet, the breeze gentle on my face. Birds flit through the trees, singing songs that require no audience. Just being. Like me. I don't wait for the phone to ring. I don't listen for knocks on the door. The silence isn't emptiness, it's space. Breathing room. Freedom. Sometimes I catch my reflection in the mirror. The same eyes. The same steady hands that once signed away my freedom now hold it tightly again. There's no bitterness in my chest. Just quiet pride. They put me away like broken furniture. I built myself a new room. No one dims my light now. No one tells my story but me. This time, I lit my own candles, and there was no one left to blow them out.